As the night's silence closed in around him, Lyrien Blackwood felt the weight of his brother's death bearing down upon him like a physical force, the memories of their final days together replaying in his mind like a cursed refrain. He had been accused, wrongly, of his brother's murder, and the Pack's justice had seen fit to condemn him to servitude, stripping him of his family, his home, and his very identity. Lyrien trudged through the desolate wasteland, the chill of the night air seeping into his bones as he counted the steps, rationing his hope like a precious commodity. He had been a runner, once, with the Pack's iron mark, but now he was nothing but a shadow, a reminder of the Pack's failures. The Alpha, Kaelin Darkshadow, had deemed him unfit, a waste of Pack resources, and Lyrien couldn't help but wonder if he had ever been worthy in the first place. As he walked, the stars above seemed to mock him, their silence a cruel reminder that he was alone, that no one would hear his pleas, no one would believe him. But Lyrien refused to give up. He had to find a way to clear his name, to bring the real killer to justice, no matter the cost. The wind howled through the darkness, and Lyrien quickened his pace, his heart pounding in his chest. He had been searching for hours, and still, he had found nothing. No sign of his brother, no clue to the killer's identity. It was as if the Pack itself was working against him, silencing him, erasing him from existence. And yet, Lyrien refused to surrender. He pressed on, driven by a burning need for truth, for justice, for redemption. The Pack's law was clear, and Omega's word was worthless, and Lyrien was just another forgotten, broken thing, left to rot in the shadows. As he quickened his pace, the stars above seemed to blur into a single, piercing point, and Lyrien's foot caught on a hidden rock, sending him tumbling into the darkness, his cries for justice swallowed by the void. As the darkness closed in around him, Lyrien's fingers instinctively curled into fists, his mind racing with thoughts of justice and redemption. He'd been walking for what felt like hours, the stars above a distant hum, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being herded towards some unknown fate. The Pack's law was clear, and Omega's word was worthless, and he was just another forgotten, broken thing, left to rot in the shadows. He forced himself to breathe, focusing on the steady beat of his heart, the soft crunch of gravel beneath his feet. His foot caught on a hidden rock, and he tumbled into the darkness, the sound of his own cry for justice swallowed by the void. The world went dark, and Lyrien's mind went cold, his body still. When he came to, he was lying on a damp, cold earth, his head throbbing with a dull ache. The air was thick with the scent of damp moss and decaying leaves, and Lyrien's stomach churned with a mixture of nausea and hunger. He slowly sat up, his eyes adjusting to the dim light, and took stock of his surroundings. He was in a small, enclosed space, the walls made of rough-hewn stone, and the air was stale and heavy. Lyrien's gaze fell upon a piece of parchment, carelessly discarded on the ground, and his heart skipped a beat as he recognized the torn fabric caught in its corner, a small, forgotten detail he'd initially overlooked. The same fabric that Thrain had been wearing the night he was murdered. Kaelin Darkshadow's voice dripped with venom as he spoke with Ira, the Pack's elderly member, their conversation hushed and urgent. The Blackwood boy's fate was always sealed, Kael's destiny tied to Thrain's. He was born to be the Alpha's heir, not that insufferable Omega boy. Lyrien's gaze snapped to the pair, their words like a punch to the gut. Ira's eyes met Lyrien's, a fleeting glimmer of guilt before she turned back to Kaelin. You know as well as I, Darkshadow, the boy's fate was all but certain the moment he was born. His bloodline carries the weight of our Pack's history, the very fabric of our power. Kaelin's smile was cold and calculated. And yet, here we are, with the boy serving the Alpha instead of ruling over him. It's almost poetic, don't you think? He leaned in, his voice taking on a sinister tone. The boy's fate was always tied to mine, Kael. And now, with Thrain's death, the pieces are finally falling into place. Lyrien's heart sank, his mind racing with the implications. He knew Kaelin's words were laced with malice, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Ira's words, more to the tangled web of lies and deceit that had ensnared him. The clock on the stone wall ticked away, each passing moment bringing Lyrien closer to his own execution. As the clock struck the final seconds, Lyrien's gaze locked onto Kaelin's, his eyes widening in horror as he realized the true extent of the Blackwood boy's fate. He was not the heir, but the key. The words "you're coming with me" died on Kaelin's lips, his smile faltering as he vanished into the darkness, leaving Lyrien alone and screaming for Thrain's execution to begin. Lyrien stumbled through the darkness, his paws aching and his breath ragged. The sound of the pack's packers preparing the execution grounds was deafening, and he knew he was running out of time. Kaelin's words still echoed in his mind. The Blackwood boy was not the heir, but the key. The weight of that sentence threatened to crush him. As he stumbled, a faint light flickered to life ahead, illuminating the dark space of the pack's courtyard. The Alpha's guards, Davin and Sable, stood watch, their eyes cold and unforgiving. Lyrien's heart sank, but he steeled himself and pushed forward, his eyes fixed on the Alpha's throne. As Lyrien's gaze met Kaelin's, the Alpha's eyes flashed with a warning, and in that instant, Lyrien saw the glint of a metal blade hidden beneath the Alpha's cloak, its presence seeming to whisper a single, chilling word, mine. Kaelin's eyes narrowed, his gaze never wavering from Lyrien's as he rose from his throne, his cloak sweeping across the floor. The air was heavy with tension, the scent of damp earth and decay hanging over the pack's chambers like a miasma. Davin and Sable, the Alpha's guards, shifted uneasily, their eyes darting between Lyrien and Kaelin. "You're coming with me, Lyrien," Kaelin's voice was low, menacing, and for a moment, Lyrien felt a shiver run down his spine. The blade hidden beneath Kaelin's cloak seemed to be staring at him, its presence a cold, calculating weight. Lyrien's heart sank, but he forced himself to stand tall, his eyes locked on Kaelin's. The Alpha's expression was a mask of serene calm, but Lyrien had seen the flash of anger in his eyes, the hint of cruelty that made his stomach twist with unease. He took a step forward, his eyes never leaving Kaelin's face. "Where are we going, Alpha?" he asked, his voice steady, despite the turmoil within him. Kaelin's smile was a thin, cruel line. "You'll come with me, Lyrien." The sudden, discordant howl shattered the air, and Lyrien's eyes widened in shock as Kaelin's grip on his arm tightened, his voice dropping to a low whisper. "You'll come with me, Lyrien." The howl continued, a haunting echo that seemed to be drawing them closer, towards some unknown fate. Kaelin's grip on Lyrien's arm tightened as the howl continued to echo through the pack's chambers. The air was thick with tension, and Lyrien's mind was racing with the implications of what Kaelin had just said. He knew the Alpha's voice was low and commanding, but the fear that settled in the pit of his stomach made his legs tremble. As they walked, the flickering torches casting eerie shadows on the walls, Lyrien's thoughts turned to his brother's murder. He couldn't shake the feeling that Kaelin was hiding something, that there was more to the Alpha's words than met the eye. The torn piece of fabric caught in the door of Thrain's chambers, the cryptic message scrawled on the wall, the whispered conversation between Kaelin and one of the pack's elderly members, all of it seemed to point to a web of deceit that Lyrien was determined to unravel. Kaelin's silence was oppressive, and Lyrien knew that he was walking into a trap. The Alpha's eyes gleamed with an unnerving intensity, and Lyrien's skin prickled with unease. He quickened his pace, his heart pounding in his chest, as the door to the pack's library came into view. "Wait," Kaelin's voice cut through the silence, his tone dripping with menace. "We're not quite done yet." Lyrien's eyes met Kaelin's, and for a moment, they locked gazes in a silent challenge. Then, with a jolt, the torches on the wall seemed to flicker in time with the howling in the distance, and Lyrien knew that he was standing at the threshold of something momentous. Kaelin's eyes never left Lyrien's as he stepped closer, his movements deliberate and menacing. "You'll learn to obey, Omega," he hissed, his voice low and menacing. "Your duty is to serve me, and only me." Lyrien's jaw clenched, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew the words, the tone, the intent all too well. He'd heard it before, from Kaelin himself, in the days leading up to his brother's murder. The memories were still raw, still seared into his mind like a branding iron. The torches on the wall seemed to flicker in time with the howling in the distance, casting eerie shadows on the walls as Kaelin's gaze seemed to bore into Lyrien's very soul. Lyrien felt the weight of his servitude bearing down on him, the crushing weight of his own insignificance. But Lyrien refused to yield. Not yet. He drew a deep breath, the cool air filling his lungs, and looked Kaelin straight in the eye. "I will not be broken, Alpha," he said, his voice steady, his heart pounding in his chest. For a moment, the two of them locked gazes, the only sound the howling of the wolves outside. Then, without warning, Kaelin spun on his heel and strode away, leaving Lyrien alone in the darkness.